Maria Brooks drifted alone through the quiet dark of space. Her small transport ship had broken down near the edge of human territory. The engines were silent, and the lights had gone dim. She felt the cold seep into every corner of the cabin. Maria wrapped her thin jacket tighter around her slender frame and climbed into the pilot seat. She pressed buttons and saw only error messages. The distress beacon blinked weakly, its signal fading with each passing minute. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She knew she could not last long in the cold emptiness of the void. Maria stood and moved toward the hatch. Her legs felt heavy from hunger. She reached into a bag and unwrapped the last protein bar she had. The wrapper crinkled loudly in the silent cabin. She took a few small bites and felt her stomach twist with both relief and pain. She set the bar down and placed her hands on her hips. Her mind wandered to memories of warmth, laughter, and real food. She thought of home on Earth, of simple meals shared with friends. A single tear slipped down her cheek, floating in zero gravity before settling on her collarbone. Through the window ahead, Maria saw a faint glimmer of light. It came from the freighter that passed by hours ago. She tapped her console and saw the ship's shape on her scanner. It was a small freighter, clearly not much larger than her own vessel. She sent out a second distress signal. It was her only hope. The signal reset over and over, but she kept it alive. Time felt slippery as she waited, every moment stretching. Like the empty stars around her after what felt like an eternity, Maria heard a chime in her cockpit. A reply. Her heart pounded as she opened the message. It read, "Identify yourself." Her fingers trembled as she typed. Name, Maria Brooks. Ship broken down. Need help. She pressed send. Now all she could do was wait. She drifted back to the hatch and looked out at the freighter's broad hull. Its lights glowed dim but steady as it loomed closer. At the freighter's control room, Eric Cohen checked his screens. He saw a small vessel drifting without power. He frowned. Distress calls were common, but most were traps or pirated signals. He tapped a button and brought the freighter to slow drift. He ordered his crew to stand by. None of them ventured outside. His ship had just made a cargo run. The hull was cold and the hold was empty. He glanced at the clock. They would need to be back in the trade lanes soon. Yet he could not ignore anyone in need, no matter the risk. Back in her ship, Maria heard the quiet hum of an airlock cycling. She floated toward the hatch as the latch unlocked. She pressed her palm against the glass. The cold metal vibrated with the sound of the freighter's engines. Her chest tightened with hope and fear. She gazed through the viewfinder as the airlock slowly opened. A harsh light flooded into her cabin. She squinted and raised an arm to shield her eyes. Then the door slid open and she saw a figure standing. In the frame, Eric stepped inside. He wore a simple jumpsuit and heavy boots that clicked on the metal floor. He held a sealed container of food and a thermal blanket. He studied Maria's thin frame and trembling hands. She looked like she might collapse at any moment. He cleared his throat. "You look hungry. I have stew and bread. You can warm yourself." In the next room, Maria's lips trembled as she looked at the food. She nodded and floated forward. Eric led her into the cabin and closed the hatch behind them. He turned on a small cooking unit, and the smell of hot stew filled the air. He handed her the bowl through the hatch. Maria wrapped her fingers around it, savoring the warmth. She took a careful sip and closed her eyes at the taste. It was simple food, but it was rich and filling. She took another spoonful and whispered, "Thank you." Eric watched her eat. He turned and checked the engine room behind him. The freighter's core needed heat to stay alive. The temperature in the hold had begun to drop. He motioned for Maria to follow him. "Can you stay warm in here tonight?" he asked. Maria nodded again. She swallowed the last spoonful, then used the blanket to cover her shoulders. She moved into the small engine room. The hum of the core was low, but it felt warmer than the endless cold of space. She placed her hands on the pipes and felt the heat slowly creep into her fingertips. Her breath slowed and her shoulders relaxed. She closed her eyes and leaned against the wall. Eric returned to the cockpit and set his controls. He would keep the freighter close to her ship until morning. Then he could tow her vessel to the nearest station. For now, he would make sure she survived the cold night. He stared at the screens, but his mind was on the pale figure lighting the engine room. In the dim glow of the core, Maria thought of home. She thought of her dreams, now on hold. Yet she felt a small spark of hope. A stranger had saved her life tonight. She closed her eyes and let the heat wash through her. Tomorrow she might say more, but tonight she was simply grateful for warmth, food, and safety. Maria woke as a soft light filled the cockpit. She blinked and saw the engine room's door open. Eric stood in the frame, holding a cup of hot tea and a small tray with fresh bread. He nodded and stepped aside. Maria moved slowly toward him. Her joints stiff from the night. Eric offered her the tea first. Its warmth eased the ache in her chest. She took the cup carefully, curling her fingers around it. The steam rose, carrying the scent of herbs. She inhaled deeply and sipped. The liquid slid down her throat and brought a sense of calm. Eric watched her quietly. After a moment, he placed the tray down on a small table. The bread was soft and still warm. Maria tore off a piece and tasted it. She closed her eyes at the flavor. It was simple but fresh. She took another piece and broke it in half to share with Eric. He smiled and accepted it gratefully. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Outside the window, stars drifted by as the freighter glided through space. Maria glanced at the view. She realized how safe she felt with Eric at the helm. She had been alone for too long. When they finished, Eric spoke. "I need to tow your ship to the station. It will take time. We will be there by daybreak tomorrow." He folded his arms. "You should rest more." "There are blankets and a cot in the back room," Maria nodded. "Thank you." "You have been very kind." Eric turned to the console and tapped a few controls. Bright lights came on around the cabin. Wires hummed. He checked the tether line that connected the two ships. The clamps held tight. The freighter's engines adjusted to slow cruise. Maria looked around the cabin. She saw tools, spare parts, and boxes of supplies. She thought of the engine room, where she had warmed the pipes. The heat had saved the freighter's core from freezing. She remembered the hard metal beneath her fingers and the steady hum. She walked to the engine room door. Eric followed. She placed her hand on the cool metal. He watched her closely. "I think I can help with repairs," she said quietly. "I know some basic mechanics." Eric raised an eyebrow. "You do? You cook stew and warm the engine? I did not know that." Maria smiled faintly. "I learned a few things where I come from." She paused. "I want to repay you for saving me," Eric nodded. "All right. Meet me in the engine room in 10 minutes. He left and returned moments later with a toolbox. Maria took it from him, surprised by its weight. They worked side by side. Eric guided her hands to tighten a bolt on a coolant line. Maria listened carefully and followed his instructions. Together they checked each pipe. Maria found a loose connector and fixed it. Eric tested the flow. The engine hummed more steadily. After an hour, they stepped back and admired their work. The core temperature held steady. Eric clapped Maria on the shoulder. "Good work, you saved me again." Maria felt a flush of pride. She returned the toolbox and wiped her hands on a cloth. The two of them stood in silent camaraderie. Back in the cockpit, they settled at the controls. Eric plotted the course toward the station. Maria watched him enter coordinates. She traced the route with her finger. "On the map screen, you have a home?" Eric asked. Maria hesitated. She clasped her hands in her lap. "Yes, on Earth I had a life there, a small town, my family. But I left long ago." She looked away. Eric glanced at her. "I'm sorry you left your family." He picked up a small data pad and flipped through files. "I can send a message." "For you, if you like." Maria shook her head. "No, I cannot go back yet. Too many will come looking for me." She tapped her leg where the phantom limb would be if she had one. Her real leg was gone at the knee. The prosthetic she had sold herself for was still in its case on her ship. She had told no one. Eric noticed her movement. He asked gently, "Are you hurt?" Maria's voice trembled. "I lost my leg. It was damaged during a mission. I cannot walk well. That is why I offered warmth. I needed the leg." She looked at Eric's kind face. I thought no one would help me. Eric's eyes softened. He opened a cabinet and pulled out a small box. He set it on the table and opened it. Inside lay a simple prosthetic leg. It was made of metal and polymer. It looked sturdy but old. I had one like that once. I never used it. I kept it as spare. He pushed it toward Maria. Take it. There is no cost. Maria stared. I can't take that. It belongs to your ship. Eric stood. It belongs to someone who needs it more. He rested a hand on her shoulder. You need it, please. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and touched the prosthetic. It felt cool under her fingers. She nodded slowly. Thank you. I will never forget this. Eric gave her a small smile. Then it will be worth it. They moved to the back room where a small workshop was set up. Eric helped Maria fit the prosthetic. She wobbled at first, then found her balance. A smile broke across her face. I can walk, she whispered. Eric stepped back. Test it out. I will be right here. Maria took a few steps. Each one felt strange but steady. She walked to the wall and ran her hand along the panels. Her movements were confident now. She turned and took Eric's hand. I feel whole again. Eric squeezed her hand. I am glad. They returned to the cockpit. Maria watched the stars and felt a new strength. She owed Eric more than her life. She owed him her hope. They spoke quietly about simple things. Eric told her stories of places he had visited. Maria shared memories of green fields and warm sunshine. On Earth, they laughed softly together. The freighter drifted on. In the silence between their words, a bond grew. Each found comfort in the other's presence. As they neared the station, lights came into view. Bright beacons guided them. The station's hangar doors opened. Eric maneuvered the ship through the entrance. Maria watched the walls pass by. Then she saw other ships, busy workers, and glowing signs. She felt nervous but ready. Eric pressed a button and the engines cut. The cabin lights brightened. He turned to Maria. We made it. Maria nodded. She placed a hand on her new prosthetic. Yes, we made it. They prepared to dock and begin repairs. The next chapter of their journey was about to start. Maria stepped toward the hatch, her heart light. She had warmth, food, a new leg, and a friend who cared. Tomorrow they would face new challenges. But tonight they rested in safety together. As the freighter cleared the station's hangar, alarms sounded in the control room. Maria and Eric looked at each other in surprise. The lights above flickered and the ship shuddered. Eric's face grew tense as he scanned the consoles. He tapped a warning icon. Pirate raider detected, he said in a low voice. The station's sensors showed a small group of raider ships approaching. Maria stood beside him, her new prosthetic leg stable beneath her. She placed a hand on his arm. What should we do? She asked. Eric straightened his shoulders. We hold position. The station's defense grid will drive them off. He moved to the pilot seat, flipping switches to signal for help. Maria moved to the communications panel and sent a distress code to the station. Outside the window, dark silhouettes of raider ships appeared against the star field. They were fast and armed. Maria watched their weapons flash as they locked onto the freighter. She felt a familiar fear, but she also felt courage. She stepped forward. I can help, she said. Eric looked at her. This is your first fight, Maria nodded. I have some abilities. If I can disrupt their sensors, maybe we can buy time. Eric hesitated, then opened a compartment under his seat. He pulled out a small electromagnetic pulse device. This could help you focus. Connect it to the comm array and send a pulse through their systems. Maria took the device and moved to the comm panel. She plugged it in and connected a cable to the ship's external transmitter. Outside, the raider ships drew closer, their engines glowing red. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. She felt the pulse device vibrate in her hand. She guided the energy through the cables and into the transmitter. A wave of energy surged out into space. In the control room, the alarms went silent. The raider ship's engines cut out for a moment. Their lights dimmed, and they spun slowly. The bay window cracked with the shock, but held. Maria opened her eyes and saw Eric's face break into a smile. "It worked," he said, relief in his voice. The station's defense turrets roared to life. Bright beams of energy struck the raider ships, sending them tumbling away. Maria and Eric watched as the ships fled into the darkness. "You saved us?" Eric said, his voice soft. Maria shook her head. "We saved each other." She pressed her hand against the window. After the battle, the station's chief engineer, Anna Price, boarded the freighter. She was tall and serious, with a worn uniform. "We saw your broadcast," she said to Eric. "Thank you for calling us." "But you're damaged," Eric nodded. "We have some hull breaches." "I need to dock and repair." He turned to Maria. "Would you like to come ashore? You could rest in my quarters." Maria hesitated. She looked at Anna, then at Eric. "I would like that." Anna guided them to an empty berth beside the hangar. Eric secured the ship and led Maria to the gangway. She stepped onto the station's metal floor and felt solid ground beneath her prosthetic. She breathed deeply. Inside the station's living quarters, Maria saw warmth and light. Families walked by, carrying trays of food. The walls were painted in bright colors. Maria sat at a small table and watched Eric pour 2 glasses of water. "This place is busy," she said. Eric nodded. "It's one of the last safe havens on this route. Most ships rest here before the long run." Maria sipped her water. "It feels like home," Eric smiled. "You are welcome here." He leaned back. "Anna says repairs will take 2 days. You can stay with me until then." Maria looked at him. "Thank you. You have done so much for me." Eric reached across the table and held her hand. "You are my friend." Maria's chest warmed with emotion. She squeezed his hand. She thought of her journey, of the darkness and cold. Then she thought of Eric and the warmth he gave her. "I will help you in return," she said. Eric raised an eyebrow. "How?" Maria smiled. "I have skills you do not know, medical skills." "I can help Anna in the infirmary," Eric nodded. "That is good. Anna could use the help." Maria rose and led him to the station's infirmary. Inside, Anna examined a crewman with an injured arm. Maria offered to assist. Anna handed her a kit. Together they cleaned and bandaged the wound. Maria's hands were steady. Anna watched in surprise. The crewman winced less under her touch. "You are good," Anna said. Maria smiled. "I learned in field hospitals far from home." Anna nodded. "We can use you here." "But your ship needs you too." Maria looked at Eric. He stood at the door, watching. She took a breath. "I will split my time. I will help here, then return to finish repairs." Eric nodded, proud. Together they left the infirmary and walked through the station's corridors. Maria felt stronger now she had food, warmth, and purpose. She looked at Eric and knew her journey was no longer lonely. She had a friend, a new home, and a mission. The stars would wait for her return. Her story continued. Maria walked off the station elevator into a bright corridor. The walls glowed soft blue, and the floor felt smooth under her new leg. Eric matched his pace to hers, careful not to rush her balance. She nodded in thanks. They headed toward the repair bay. Outside the bay, workers loaded cargo onto a transport. Sparks flew as a welder fixed a panel. Maria inhaled the smell of hot metal and oil. Eric led her around the bay to a small workshop. Tools hung on pegboards, and a half-finished hull section lay on a stand. Maria touched the metal lightly. She remembered the warmth of the freighter's engine room. Here, heat came from torches and machines. Eric found the breach in the freighter's hull. The metal was bent and cracked. He turned to Maria. "We need to replace this section. I can help, but we'll need support." Maria looked around and spotted a cargo lift. She smiled. "I know a trick." She went to the lift controls and pressed buttons to raise the section. It clanged and shifted. Eric steadied it as Maria pulled a large panel free. She floated it aside. Eric handed her a welding torch. She swallowed, then steeled herself. She placed the torch at the edge of the hull and touched the flame to the metal. It glowed red. Eric guided her hand. Together they welded the new panel into place. Sparks flew around them. Maria focused on the joint. She had fixed small repairs before, but this felt bigger. She forced herself to stay calm after they finished. Eric tested the seal. The alarm beeped. Pressure held. Maria let out a breath. She did not know she held. Eric slapped her back in relief. She laughed softly. The work had been hard, but she felt alive as they cleaned up. Anna Price entered the workshop. She frowned at the sight of Maria's torch marks. We'll need to polish that edge, but it holds, Eric nodded. She did great. He met Maria's eyes. Anna smiled. You'll make a fine technician. Maria felt a warm glow. She stood. Taller. Thank you. She glanced at Eric. He returned a proud look. Later they left the repair bay and walked through the station's market. Stalls offered fresh fruit, fabric, and small trinkets. Maria stopped at a stall selling woven cloth. She picked a bright scarf. The vendor wrapped it for her. Eric paid and watched her choose. She draped the scarf around her shoulders. The colors reminded her of home fields in summer. She smiled at the vendor. It is beautiful. Eric took her hand and led her to a small dining area. Trays of hot soup and bread were served. Maria tasted the soup and closed her eyes at the flavor. This station meal was simple but warm. Eric smiled as he watched her enjoy it. At dusk, the stations. Lights dimmed. Maria and Eric stood on an observation deck. Through large windows, they saw ships come and go like fireflies. Maria leaned on the rail. She felt hope and calm. Eric stood beside her. I will stay here, Maria whispered. I will help Anna. With repairs and medicine, she turned to him. And when our ship is ready, we will travel together. Eric nodded. Yes. He placed his arm around her shoulder. They stood in silence as the station lights pulsed. Maria felt that her life had changed forever. She had warmth, food, a home, and a friend. Tomorrow they would return to the freighter and finish their journey. But tonight they watched the stars, safe and together. Maria stepped onto the station floor and felt solid ground beneath her new prosthetic. She took a deep breath, amazed at how stable she felt. Eric stood behind her, offering a steady hand. They walked through the hangar toward the cargo lifts. Sparks from welders and the hum of machinery filled the air. Workers carried heavy crates and loaded parts onto transports. Maria watched them with interest. She felt a pull to help. Eric tapped his datapad. We need to collect supplies for the freighter's final repairs. Let's get cargo credits. Maria followed him through a maze of corridors to the stations. Exchange terminal. Bright holoscreens displayed prices for every part imaginable. She pointed at a row of alloy plating. We need that for the hull, Eric nodded. He transferred credits and selected several panels. The terminal printed a receipt and assigned a loader bot to deliver the parts to their docked freighter. While they waited, Maria looked around. She spotted a group of merchants playing a card game at a nearby table. Curious, she approached. Eric watched her with a gentle smile. Maria introduced herself to the vendor, a tall woman with brightly colored hair. I'm looking for a map of the nearby trade routes. The vendor raised an eyebrow. That costs extra. Why? Maria hesitated. To plan our journey? To avoid pirates? The vendor studied her. You have a good reason. 10 credits, no more. She handed Maria a small data chip. Maria paid and thanked her. They left the exchange and headed back to the hangar. Their cargo crate arrived on a rolling platform. Workers unloaded the panels and tools, stacking them near the freighter's hatch. Eric and Maria climbed aboard. Eric sealed the hatch and guided Maria to the workshop. She recognized the space from days before. It felt familiar now. Eric began installing the new panels. He measured each section and marked cut lines. Maria watched closely, then knelt beside him. She held the measuring tool steady as he cut the metal. They worked in silence, their movements in sync. Maria passed Eric tools and cleaned edges. He tightened bolts while she applied sealant. Each panel fell into place. As they finished the hull plating, a warning light blinked on the console. Eric frowned and tapped the screen. Pirate. Raiders approaching again. This time they have heavier weapons. Maria's heart raced. She stood and moved to the window. 3 large ships loomed close. Their guns glowed ominous red. Eric stayed calm. We cannot rely on the station's defense this time. They'll be busy elsewhere. Maria straightened. We must fight them ourselves. Eric studied her. You know, I cannot pilot and fight alone. Maria's eyes gleamed with resolve. Let me help you. I can shield us. Eric nodded. All right. Strap in at the gun turret. They hurried to the turret room. Eric powered up the twin cannons. Maria climbed behind him, the turret straps securing her tight. Outside, the hangar doors opened to the void. Stars and ships glowed against the black backdrop. The raider ships swooped in. Eric tracked the first ship in his targeting scope. He fired the cannons. Bright beams cut through space and struck the raider's hull. The enemy ship flared and veered away. But two other ships closed in. Maria steadied her breathing. She placed her hands on the turret's control panel. A soft glow gathered around her palms. She extended her arms. A shimmering barrier appeared around the freighters. Hull. Energy waves rippled out, absorbing incoming blasts. The raider's shots sparked against the shield and fell harmlessly into space. Maria kept her focus, her mind steady. Eric watched the barrier. It's working. Keep it up. Maria nodded. She felt the weight of the power and kept the barrier strong. Eric moved swiftly, firing again. One raider exploded, then another. The last ship paused, then retreated into the darkness. The hangar doors closed with a hiss. Maria collapsed in the turret seat, panting. Eric rushed to her side. Are you all right? He asked, concern in his voice. Maria nodded, her face pale but determined. I'm fine. We won. Eric unstrapped her and pulled her into a gentle embrace. You saved us again. Maria buried her face in his chest. We saved each other. They stayed like that for a moment, the world outside forgotten. When they pulled apart, Eric wiped her tears. Let's finish the repairs. Back in the workshop, they sealed the final bolts. Maria checked the map on her data chip. She traced a safe route through less traveled sectors. Eric programmed the navigation system. With the freighter fully repaired and weapons ready, they prepared to depart. Maria packed the data chip and stored the extra tools. She felt a mix of relief and excitement. Eric closed the hatch and sealed the cargo bay. He turned to Maria. Shall we? Maria smiled. Yes, let's go home. They climbed into the cockpit and took their seats. Eric started the engines and the freighter hummed to life. Maria felt the vibrations through her prosthetic leg. Eric activated the tether release. The ship drifted away from the station. Stars stretched into lines as they jumped to warp speed. Maria looked at Eric. They shared a quiet smile. They had faced pirates, repaired the ship, and found strength in each other. Their journey was far from over, but together they could face anything the galaxy held. The freighter floated in the quiet of space as Maria checked the navigation panel. Eric sat in the pilot seat, his hands steady on the controls. They were clear of the station's orbit and moving toward the trade lane. Maria leaned forward and tapped a button. The map projected a path away from the busiest routes. This will take us a bit longer, she said. But we stay safe, Eric nodded. Safety is worth the time. He glanced at her. You have changed my life. I owe you more than I can say. Maria reached out and touched his arm. We have changed each other? She paused. I want to go home someday. But maybe I find a new home with you. Eric looked surprised. Then he smiled softly. I would like that. Maria smiled and sighed. She had dreamed of simple things again. She reached down and touched her prosthetic leg. It was loose but strong. She felt whole. The hours passed as they worked together. Eric checked the engines, while Maria prepared a meal in the small galley. Bread toasted in the corner and soup warmed. The smell of spices filled the cabin. Maria set 2 bowls on the table. They sat and ate in silence, dipping bread and savoring each spoonful. After the meal, they cleaned up. Maria washed each dish by hand. Eric dried and stacked them. They moved in a smooth rhythm like dancers. When the last bowl was clean, they stood facing each other. Maria's eyes glowed with quiet joy. Thank you, she said. For the food, the ship, the leg, and everything. Eric stepped closer. Thank you for being brave, kind and strong. He offered his hand. Would you dance with me? Maria laughed softly. We have no music. Eric tapped the console and soft music filled the cabin. A slow melody from old Earth songs. Maria recognized the tune. She smiled. Eric held out his hand. She took it. They moved in a gentle sway between the control panels and the table. Even in the tiny cabin, they felt a world of warmth. Maria rested, her head on Eric's shoulder. He held her close. Their steps were slow and sure. The stars outside blinked like distant lights. When the music ended, Maria looked into Eric's eyes. I never thought I would feel this safe again. Eric placed a kiss on her forehead. You deserve safety, hope, and more. Maria blinked back tears. She nodded. I am ready for our journey. Eric straightened and moved back to the pilot seat. He set the course and engaged the engines. The freighter hummed louder, and space stretched into streaks of light. Maria returned to her seat behind him. She pressed her hand on his back, feeling the rhythm of the ship. Suddenly, alarms sounded. Lights flashed red. Eric's hands moved quickly on the controls. He frowned and tapped the display. Asteroid field ahead, he said. It was not on the map. Maria joined him at the console. We can fly through, careful. She held his arm. We can do this. Eric nodded, trusting her words. He steered the ship toward the edge of the field. Maria analyzed each asteroid's path on the sensors. She guided Eric with calm voice. Small one left, she said. Slow down and turn up slightly. Eric adjusted the throttle and yanked the controls. The freighter rolled and dipped between rocky masses. Maria's heart pounded. She grasped the rail. Each rock passed close enough to see its rough surface. Sparks flew as debris scraped the hull. We are clear, Maria said as the last boulder fell behind them. She exhaled. Eric laughed with relief. Eric slapped the console. You did great. He looked at Maria. I would not have made it without you, Maria smiled, pride shining in her eyes. We make a good team. They settled back into cruise. The stars returned to points of light. Maria sat beside Eric and reached for his hand. What will we do when we reach the next station? She asked. Eric tapped the display. We rest, resupply, and continue. Then I head home to Earth. Will you come? With me? Maria's heart fluttered. Yes, I will. She rested her head on his shoulder. Hours turned into days as they traveled. Maria helped in the cockpit. She learned engine diagnostics and sensor controls. Eric watched her excitement at each new task. She laughed when she sparked a warning light by mistake, and he gently guided her hand to reset it. When the ship hummed smoothly, they shared quiet moments. Maria read old Earth poetry on a data chip. Eric told stories of space explorers. They grew closer with each passing light year. One night, Maria woke to find Eric watching her from across the cabin. She sat up. Are you awake? She asked softly. Eric nodded. I wanted to see you, to make sure you are safe. Maria patted the seat beside her. He sat down. She turned her prosthetic foot in slow circles. I feel alive again, she said. You gave me hope, Eric. Eric touched her leg gently. You gave me purpose. He paused. Maria, stay with me, not as crew or passenger, but as partner. In this ship and in life. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She placed her hand on his. I will stay always. Eric smiled and pulled her close. Always. They held each other as the freighter glided through the silent stars. Ahead lay new adventures, new challenges, and the promise of home. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy offered. And in each other's arms they found the greatest treasure, hope, love, and a future among the stars.